Colombo, who was awarded Bharat Ratna. Have respect to that institution also. Sri Sachin Tendulkar is saying, please, बैठ जाइए, please.
Cricket legend, god of cricket, Master Blaster Sachin Tendulkar was in for a big surprise as he tried to make his maiden speech in the Rajya Sabha.
It is his maiden speech, that too on an important issue of sports, which is needed for the country. Do not trivialize things and don't create trouble in the house and don't get bad name also. This is my suggestion to you. Please, abide jaiye sab log. We don't want to respect a person who is a legendary in cricket in India. Every youngster is inspired by his game and you people don't want to hear him. Ye paddhati nahi hai.
Yes, our netas did not even spare Sachin Tendulkar.
Sachin Tendulkar stood in Parliament today for 10 minutes waiting for an opportunity to speak. It's a moment that should shame us. Bharat Ratna stood silent in Rajya Sabha, rudely shut down by our netas with shameless sloganeering. The Vice President of India, the Chairperson of the House, Venkaiah Naidu, tried several times to give Sachin a chance to speak, pointing out that it was his maiden speech in Parliament. For 6 minutes and 10 seconds, Sachin stood waiting for an opportunity to speak. He was finally forced to take his seat, and Sachin Tendulkar reportedly wanted to speak on the future of Indian sports. He wanted to propose a law that would ensure that every child in India has the right to play. Sadly, his plea to demand better sports facilities for our children went unheard today, because nobody wanted to prioritize the things that Sachin wanted to talk about over their politics. That's the debate today. Given the ruckus in the politics and the bipartisan conversations that have taken over our country, where are the real issues? When will we have time to talk about health, to talk about education, to talk about sports, to talk about rights? And how can we as a country today have any respect for the netas who didn't respect a Bharat Ratna awardee who wanted to speak? Is this what Parliament has come to? Parliament is meant to be about debate, meant to be about people who have been put in that room because they know what is right for us. They can't even bear to listen to each other. How are we going to get any work done? That's the question I'm asking of you today. Do you believe that these netas truly represent us? Is this what we expect from them? And to see that visual of Sachin's face today when he stood there waiting to make his speech and nobody wanted to listen, reminded me of the fact that he said, I like to let my bat do the talking. Shame on us. Joining me on the show today, Amitabh Sinha, National Executive Member of the BJP, Adil Singh, spokesperson of the Congress, Kishore Vimani, Senior Sports Journalist, Pradeep Magazine, Senior Sports Journalist as well, Reeth Abraham, Athlete and Arjuna Award winner, Hassan Rizvi, Political Commentator, Sujay Jairaj, Trustee of Jamnabai Narsi School. I welcome all of you to this conversation. Thank you for making time to be with us today. Opening rounds of arguments, and I'm going to start with Reeth. Reeth Abraham, terribly embarrassing day for us and such an important thing that Sachin was going to talk about. He was going to talk about how every child should have the right to play and how sports should be prioritized.
I truly believe too that sports has to be made compulsory in all the schools. If physics and chemistry is made compulsory, why not sports? Because I don't think any child or parent would regret sports being a part of the school curriculum.
All right, I want to bring in...
It'll only make the child stronger physically. And
yes, I want to bring in Adil Singh of the Congress. Is this really what the Congress party intended for its netas to do in Rajya Sabha?
Well, Faye, let me at the outset state that the Congress party has the highest of respect for Mr. Tendulkar. He's an icon for all of us. We're very proud of him. And let me also point out that he was nominated to the Rajya Sabha by the Congress party and he was awarded the Bharat Ratna during the Congress rule. But let's understand the underlying issue today. Mr. Modi, from an electoral pulpit, made serious allegations of treason and sedition against the former Prime Minister who happens to be the member of the Rajya Sabha, against the former Vice President who was the chairman. Of course, that's interlinked. You can't see this in isolation. The Congress party, since last week, is urging the Prime Minister to come on the floor of the House and respond to those allegations which he levelled in Gujarat. Serious allegations have been levelled. The entire country is outraged.
So you don't think
when you accuse the former Prime Minister of this country, the former army chief of this country,
you don't think that Sachin Tendulkar was insulted in Parliament today?
Well, Faye, let's understand, and I'm sure Mr. Tendulkar will agree with us, a member of the House in the entire country is outraged. Members of your fraternity, Faye, have been accused of sedition and treason. Isn't it incumbent on the Bharatiya Janata Party and the Prime Minister to come on the floor of the House and clarify?
What does that have to do with interrupting Sachin Tendulkar's maiden speech in Parliament?
Of course, it's interlinked.
No, I don't see how. No. I don't see how. If you have protests, I'm sure there are other ways.
No, you can't see this issue. You have to see it in the proper context.
All right, okay. So you're saying that the two things are interlinked. And so tell me something. Will Parliament function at all?
Clarify. It's as simple as this.
Will Parliament be allowed to function at all in this winter session? Will we get any work done?
We are very clear. I'll tell you a solution. I'll tell you a solution to this logjam. Let Mr. Modi come to the House and clarify tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock on what basis did he make that allegation of sedition and treason against General Deepak Kapoor, against Mr. Hamid Ansari and Dr. Manmohan Singh. Let him clarify and the House can continue with the business. He must have made the statement on the basis of some proof. Let him furnish that proof, otherwise let him apologize. The entire country is outraged. Aren't you outraged, Faye, that an allegation of sedition has been levelled against your former Prime Minister? Dr. Manmohan Singh does not belong to the Congress party alone. He's an institution in himself.
And Sachin Tendulkar is an institution as well. And how does insulting one over the other make anything better? I want to bring in Kishore Bhimani at this point. Mr. Bhimani, it's appalling. I'm embarrassed.
I cannot believe what I'm hearing from the previous speaker. Whichever party you represent, is this what we are debating today? What we are talking about is the Parliament's total insensitivity to an icon like Sachin Tendulkar making a speech on a subject which is so relevant that the subject is about improvement in sport. For years we've waited for Sachin Tendulkar nominated to Rajya Sabha to take up things like match fixing, to take up things like improvement in sport, to take up things like, better facilities, better coaching facilities, sports in villages. What are we talking about? But Manmohan Singh and Modi, I think there are enough times when we talk about it. Today we are talking about what has happened in Parliament. I think it is an insult to Tendulkar. It's an insult to sport. It's an insult to all of us who love the game. And I think poor Sachin there, standing there, wanting to say something, wanting to make his small contribution to sport, to the great institution of Rajya Sabha. And here we are talking about one Prime Minister insulting another Prime Minister. I've never heard anything totally irrelevant in my life.
Absolutely. And when he doesn't speak, he comes under flak for not speaking. And when he wants to speak, nobody was willing to listen to him. I want to bring in Amitabh Sinha, National Executive Member of the BJP. Mr. Sinha, it's embarrassing today that Parliament did not let Sachin Tendulkar have his say about something so important, the right that our children have to play. So not only, Mr. Bhimani, did we insult Sachin Tendulkar and sports, we also set aside our children. Mr. Amitabh Sinha, go ahead.
See, this incident, yes, see, this incident today in the Parliament is not new. Because Congress is basically facing acute problem of bankruptcy of issues. They earlier in UPA 1 and in UPA 2 they have policy paralysis, and after getting defeated they have lost the entire list of issues for them, and that's why they are following such type of ruckus making and complete cacophony house syndrome. They just want to disrupt the house. so that they should be in the news. See, it is very unfortunate that a legend like Sachin Tendulkar was not able to speak because of this cacophony, this ruckus. It is a very common thing, and they have nothing to say. They have to hide the face because they have lost both the elections. That's why they don't want to face the house. They don't want to face the media. They just want to create such type of unruly scene in the house. Number one. Number two, when Sachin Tendulkar ji was trying to put forward some points that were very relevant. Number one, he tried to put this demand before the house that all the meritorious sports persons, they should be given CGHS health facilities, etc. Then right to play. So all these things actually India needs. But despite the fact that they were very relevant issues which were being raised by the Mr. Sachin Tendulkar ji, the Congress never allowed him. So that actually is showing the mindset of Congress approach, Congress thinking. This is very important, and country, the nation should know that this thing should be condemned again in other elections, because they have nothing to raise in the parliament also.
Adil Singh, do you want to respond to that? Adil Singh Bopara, do you want to respond to that?
Disturbed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Faye, I think the BJP forgets their own conduct when they were in opposition. One of their senior most leaders, I still remember, he made a statement saying that we don't have the appetite to pass legislations. And that leader today is one of the senior most ministers in the current government, so the BJP should not forget its own conduct. I'm giving you a solution to this logjam. Let Mr. Modi come tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the Rajya Sabha and respond to the allegation which he levelled against Dr. Manmohan Singh and other high-ranking dignitaries. Let him furnish proof or apologize to the country, and we can continue with the business of the House. You can't make these statements and accuse senior leaders and other dignitaries of anti-nationalism.
The verdict that anything which is spoken outside the House
it was Mr. Modi who levelled those allegations, Mr. Sinha. You are accusing a former Prime Minister and Army Chief of sedition and treason. The country demands an answer. The country is outraged. You can't get away with this. You can't get away with these scandalous allegations.
He has already given the ruling that anything which is...
No, we're not going to let this pass.
He has already given the ruling that it is not...
Dr. Manmohan Singh is a member of the Rajya Sabha.
You are actually believing the judgments
Dr. Manmohan Singh
of the
a member of the
constitutional
Rajya
positions
Sabha?
also.
You accuse an institution of this country of sedition, and you expect to run away from this.
See, no,
it is unfortunate that Mr. Modi makes such derogatory allegations.
See, when things are
accuses a former Prime Minister of sedition. That is unfortunate.
Just a minute, derogatory. Who will decide that it is derogatory? Number one.
In this country.
Just a minute. Who will decide that what the Honorable Prime Minister has said is derogatory? Number one. Number two.
Right. Okay. Gentlemen, we are talking about sports, and I think this is one of the problems.
You people are saying that the entire episode happened outside the house. So how the house becomes party?
Let Mr. Modi come and respond. Let him clarify.
The chairman has already given his ruling that
is the solution to this logjam.
Let me bring in the rest of my... One second, gentlemen. I think this is happening again. Politics is taking over sports. Politics is taking precedence over other issues, and that's exactly what we are bringing up today. The tutu meme that's happening between the BJP and the Congress is taking precedence over all of the other real issues that we have in our country. We should actually focus on the real issues. Let me bring in my other guests, and I want to bring in also at this point Mr. Pradeep Magazine. Mr. Pradeep Magazine, this is unfortunately the truth. Politics always gets more importance than sports, and we're never able to really discuss the things. Take for example what Sachin Tendulkar was going to talk about today: Central Health Guarantee Scheme for all international medal winners, and we didn't have time for this.
Well, from a sports perspective, yes, Sachin Tendulkar, who is a Rajya Sabha member, fortunately or unfortunately nominated by the same Congress which didn't allow him to speak today. I can understand from where Congress is coming. I can understand that even I, as a citizen of this country, want to know what the present Prime Minister, whether the charges he levelled against the former Prime Minister and against the Army Chief, whether they are true or not. I can understand from where they are coming, but I can't understand why couldn't they have allowed Sachin to speak today, respecting not the only fact that he is one of the greatest sportsmen India has ever produced, but also the fact that a sportsperson of his stature was going to speak on what needs to be done and what help the government can provide to sportsmen, sportspersons of this country, so that the sports does better than what it's been doing so far. Then they could have made an exception. I think they scored a self-goal. They should have said that, look, because it is Sachin Tendulkar, we will keep our protest in hold till he speaks, and after that we will disrupt the parliament. If that is what they had done, they probably would have earned the respect of a lot of people.
That's really well said. Hassan Rizvi, as a political commentator, do you agree here with Mr. Magazine?
Let me add only one point.
Mr. Sinha, I'll come back to you when all of my panelists have had a chance.
Let me add only one point. See,
Mr. Sinha, I'll come back to you. Hassan Rizvi, please. Hassan Rizvi.
But still interconnected points to make.
Yes, go ahead.
I have three separate but still interconnected points to make. First, we should not try to boil down the whole controversy at the level of who's and who. The reason being, whether he is Sachin Tendulkar or someone else, we as a nation have a great respect for him. But indeed, he is the part of the legislature. And if I say that, look at the attendance he made in the parliament since the time he got nominated in the Rajya Sabha. So I am not very disgusted, or I am not very disheartened to see that when Sachin Tendulkar was not allowed to speak. Number 2 point, that we are in a parliamentary democratic system, and where the political executive is part of the legislature also. So when political executive is part of the legislature, the treasury benches, if treasury benches people who runs the government have made any statement outside the purview of the parliament, the opposition party will get only opportunity in the parliament itself to debate, and the opposition parties are making such a statement or trying to stall the proceeding of the parliament because the political executive made this statement outside the purview. So whether I humbly ask, what are the platforms available to the opposition parties to raise such issues? Number 3, look at the point the opposition parties are raising. The point they are raising actually associated with the national security. So when national security is at stake, irrespective who was not made to speak in the parliament, who has stopped making any statement, it is completely immaterial.
Okay. Three very good points. Let's get answers to all 3 points. First of all, Mr. Sinha, this point of the parliament is the only option that the opposition has, the only route the opposition has to protest, and also the points that were being raised were of national security, and hence they are more important than anything else that might have been slotted in parliament that day. Please respond.
see, this is the approach of Congress, and because of that, that's why I was trying to intervene. Our learned, co-panelist, friend, he told that this is self-goal. I just wanted to add that this is not self-goal. This is political suicide. Actually, because of the short-sightedness and complete bankruptcy of issues, Congress is reducing day by day, and they are not ready to understand that what exactly is the fault line inside their system and their thought process. See, all these things which are being discussed in the parliament is important. So who will decide that what is important, what is not important? Every member of parliament has the prerogative to decide that according to his perception, this point is important. It's fairly fine.
Mr. Sinha,
but
I
as a party, if you are not speaking or just creating ruckus,
Mr. Sinha, I believe the question was, where would the opposition voice their protest in, if not in parliament? That's what Hassan Rizvi said. The opposition has no other room other than parliament to voice its protest.
I agree. I understand your question, but let me respond. I understand your question, but let me respond. See, there is always a protocol everywhere. If you have some issue, you should raise the issue in the parliament and then wait for the system to respond. And in this particular case also, I have already explained, and again I will try to explain that who is the final person whose verdict. Just a minute, who will decide what is the final verdict? In the Lok Sabha, the speaker is the final authority, and the Rajya Sabha, the chairman, who is the vice president of India, he is the final authority. So in Rajya Sabha, when they are creating nuisance, and no business was being possible to take up, the honorable chairman, he gave the ruling that when the things were all any allegation whatever is being raised, was not inside the house, it cannot be discussed. When the ruling has already been there, it's final. So after that, they should have accepted it, and they should have given this responsibility to the Prime Minister. When the Prime Minister would arrive, he will decide that whether this issue should be raised or not, or he should address this issue or not. But they have not. They have decided that they have no faith in any system, neither in the executive nor in the legislative.
Adil Singh, respond.
Mr. Sinha, let others complete. Number one, Faye, let me reiterate that the Congress party has the highest respect for Mr. Sachin Tendulkar. That's point number one. Point number two, let me remind my BJP friend that Dr. Manmohan Singh is a member of the Rajya Sabha. Mr. Hamid Ansari was the former chairman of the Rajya Sabha. We could have moved a privileged motion against the Prime Minister. We could have done that. After all, a scandalous allegation has been leveled against the former Prime Minister of this country. We don't want to do that because we don't want to reduce the level of discourse. Never before, Faye, and I say this with responsibility, never before in the history of independent India has a sitting Prime Minister accused the former Prime Minister and the former Army Chief of treason and sedition. And now when we seek a clarification from him, he's not coming to the house. Now tell us, what do we do? The entire country is outraged. And I'm giving you a solution. Let Mr. Modi come tomorrow morning to the Rajya Sabha and clarify. Let him furnish the proof or apologize to the country and withdraw his comments. The house will continue. The business will continue. Why is the BJP running away from this?
So how does it matter that a Prime Minister apologizes for anything which he has said or he has not said?
Of course it matters.
The important
you
thing,
accuse the former Prime Minister of sedition, and then you say it doesn't matter?
How does it matter? When Mr. Sachin Tendulkar, such noted personality.
No, hang on. Let me bring it back. Let me bring it back to sports. This is the problem. This is the problem.
Is it just
let me bring it back to the questions that Hassan Rizvi raised, and I'm going to take this to Mr. Pradeep Magazine. Mr. Magazine, the question of which is 1 second, Mr. Magazine, the question that's also popping up on our Twitter account and on Involve is, what about Sachin's attendance record in Rajya Sabha? Do you believe that is relevant today? Given the fact that he was going to make his maiden speech, a lot of people are asking, but he hardly ever attended, why am I making a fuss? And this was also the question that was asked by Hassan Rizvi. Do you think that that's a valid question to ask today?
It may not be today in the light of the fact that he finally was going to speak, but it's a fact that a lot of people, a lot of us are a bit perturbed that he was nominated to Rajya Sabha. His attendance was abysmally poor. That's for the Congress to have thought that should they have given a Rajya Sabha ticket just on the basis of somebody who is an iconic figure, but what his contribution in the Rajya Sabha should have been, which was not. I mean, he has not spoken so far in the Rajya Sabha itself. In the last 4 or 5 years, he has been the Rajya Sabha MP. But having said that, that does not mean he's a cricketer. He was nominated because he was a great cricketer. He was being conferred with Bharat Ratna, the highest civilian award the government confers on a citizen of this nation. So when he speaks finally, even if it was late, I wish that the Congress had decided to allow him to speak and hear what he has to say, because from a sporting perspective or sports perspective, as I was saying earlier, it was important to know what Sachin would have come up with, what suggestions he would have come up with.
Yes.
And his suggestions, obviously, the government would have had to take it seriously, and it would have helped sports. So for whatever the reasons were, and I am not for a second saying that the reasons Congress has, like a sedition charge against the former army chief and the former Prime Minister of India, I am sure every citizen of this country would want to know from the government, from the Prime Minister, that when he has leveled these allegations, are they true or not?
But Mr. Bhimani, do you agree?
Congress
Kishore
had
Bhimani
decided to make an exception today and allowed Sachin to speak.
May
Yes, Kishore Bhivani,
If
do you
somebody
believe that the
can allow
Congress
me
should
to
have set
speak,
aside its issue?
I'd like to make a couple of points.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I personally believe that I want to object to the statement made by Mr. Singh that since there's no opposition has no other way of protesting. What nonsense is this? Opposition go and sit down and hunger strike on Janpath if they want. They can go take out processions. They can do what they like. Why do they have to interrupt the proceedings here? Especially it hurts one. Say if there was Javed Akhtar speaking on the Padmavati episode or something very, very relevant. Today Sachin Tendulkar, we have been complaining that Sachin doesn't attend Rajya Sabha. He's been persuaded by well-meaning people that attend Parliament, try to do something for sport. He comes here, wants to do something for sport, wants to do about deprived people. He wants to make a speech. And all we are making it that, why doesn't BJP answer? Why doesn't the Prime Minister answer? All day we go through this discourse. Why does this discourse have to come up when we are discussing one or two constructive things? I am very, very sorry. And that if this is going to come down to the people who are shouting their horse on Parliament House, I'm quite ashamed of this. And as for people saying that all of us are worried about this, no. Please speak for yourself. Please speak for your party. Do not speak for me. I am not part of this mob.
Right. I want to bring in Sujay Jairaj. Sujay, I apologize for keeping you waiting for so long. Sachin Tendulkar wanted the inclusion of sports in education curriculum, and he wanted sports infrastructure available for all students or all children as a constitutional right. How important is it for us to be having that conversation right now, Sujay?
Right. I think having sports infrastructure and having physical education right from a very small age, like from the time the child is in the preschool, is like very, very important. Unfortunately, what is happening is, of course, many private schools have great sports infrastructure. They have a great physical education curriculum. But if you see majority of the schools all over India, the infrastructure is quite lacking, and even the curriculum is lacking. So looking at the demographics of India, it is the sports education, the physical education is what will change the culture of sports in India, motivate the students to take up sports seriously, create more champions, and besides creating champions, teach people how to have a disciplined lifestyle with better concentration, a better active and healthy lifestyle. So I think inclusion of sports in every school and for every student in India is very, very important.
Reet, I'm going to come back to Reet about the other suggestion according to the Times of India that Sachin was going to make today. And that is for infrastructure. He wanted coverage under the Central Health Guarantee Scheme for all international medal winners, incorporation of sports in school curriculum. And he basically wanted to make playing a right for all children. Reet, how important is that today? And do you believe it was more or less important than the questions that were being raised by the opposition in the Rajya Sabha?
Is that for me?
No, my question was to Reet Abraham. Do we have her
No,
audio?
altogether.
Yes.
Probably it was...
Go ahead, Reet. We can hear you now.
I can't hear.
Looking at all the discussions that were happening, you could clearly know that, the floor had a different agenda. Whether it was Sachin or anybody else, they would have made the same noise. But Sachin being there for the first time and making his maiden speech, I think for his credibility, they should have allowed him to speak and listen to him. Having said that, I think it's really important that we make sports compulsory in all the schools from a very young age so that the children get stronger, and those who are talented and take sports seriously get stronger and, train hard and win medals for the country. And also the other point which Sachin made was to make health insurance and things like that compulsory for all the sportsmen, because knowing most of the sportsmen don't have health insurance, and once they are injured, whether they are talented or just budding athletes, their sports career is over. And for 2 years, if you take a rest after an injury, to make a comeback and spend so much of money is really difficult. And other than a sportsman and somebody who has passion for sports, really don't know what goes on in a sports person's life.
Absolutely. I'm going to take this back to Hassan Rizvi. Hassan Rizvi, you asked 3 questions. One is about Sachin's attendance. Second is about the options that the opposition has to protest. And the third was about the points being raised on national security. Do you believe you've received answers from our panelists about, with regard to those 3 points that you raised?
No, I did not get I did not get any of the answer because I am getting an impression that we are giving unwarranted emotional overtone to the whole crisis.
Okay.
That is not required at all, because this is completely unwarranted emotional overtone we are giving. Because my concern is that Parliament is the temple of democracy, and within the ambit of democracy, right to dissent is the essential part. Because the people who are sitting there to legislate are raising the voice of the people, because they are the public representative. They have been elected by the people of the whole country. They have to respond back to the whole, to the nation, to the people of the country, that when the Prime Minister or the political executive made such a statement outside the purview of the Parliament on the pretext of election, he or she, who made such a statement, has to be responsible within the ambit of Parliament and nothing less than that. Because since the person who was stopped speaking in the Parliament is a Bharat Ratna awardee or a renowned sports person, it does not mean the Parliament should allow him to speak. Parliament was not obviously against the Sachin Tendulkar. Parliament has been stopping the proceeding of the
but Hassan Rizvi, at this rate we'll never get any work done. But Hassan, at this rate we'll never get any work done. There are bills pending in Parliament. The Consumer Rights Bill, for example.
I made this point very categorical, that I totally agree. I totally agree that there is an increasing trend of degradation in the proceeding of the Parliament that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. I totally agree.
In fact, let me do one thing, Hassan. I get your point, Hassan. I get your point. In fact, I want my viewers who might have joined us now to take a look at this clip and decide if we are being overly emotional. So this is what happened. Sachin Tendulkar was in Rajya Sabha to make a speech for the first time. This was his maiden speech. Remember, he's a man of few words. He's a sports person. He's not an orator. He's not a politician. So he must have prepared. He must have put work behind this. He stood up to speak. Look at what happened.
The honorable member who has been awarded Bharat Ratna by the government, he wants to make a submission on sports, which is a very important activity for the country. Please follow the rules. थोड़ा मर्यादा रखिए, उनको सुनिए, आप में से जिन्होंने नाम लिया वो भी बोलिए. ये अच्छा पद्धति नहीं है, इससे कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. श्री सचिन तेंदुलकर is saying, प्लीज बैठ जाइए, प्लीज. मर्यादा पूरा देश देख रहे. ये कोई पद्धति नहीं है. अब लोग बैठ जाइए. Have respect to that institution also. Please hear him. चलिए. आप बोलिए. ये रिकॉर्ड में नहीं जा रहे. ये रिकॉर्ड में नहीं जा रहे. आप बोलिए. It is his maiden speech, that too on an important issue of sports, which is needed for the country. Do not trivialize things and don't create trouble in the house and don't get bad name also. This is my suggestion to you. Please, आप बैठ जाइए सब लोग. We don't want to respect a person who is a legendary in cricket in India. Every youngster is inspired by his game, and you people don't want to hear him. ये पद्धति नहीं है. ये पद्धति नहीं है.
Well, Sachin Tendulkar is used to applause normally, but I'm sure he wished that today he could let his bat do the talking instead of having to wait for silence in the Rajya Sabha. Adil Singh, representing the Congress party, that disrupted Parliament today, and then the BJP. Adil Singh, go ahead. Are we being overly emotional about Sachin Tendulkar, Adil Singh? Didn't you feel a slight tinge of embarrassment? Honestly.
Faye, the Congress party has the highest of respect for Mr. Tendulkar. Please understand, it was the Congress which nominated him to the Rajya Sabha, but you have to see the entire context. The winter session started on Friday. The Congress party moved a resolution seeking a clarification from the Prime Minister. And I ask a question from you, Faye, today. Dr. Manmohan Singh has devoted 5 decades of his life towards public service. And Mr. Modi, in one stroke, undermines that and calls him an anti-national. Is that fair? Isn't it incumbent on Mr. Modi today to come and respond to those allegations? To furnish proof or apologize?
Could you have Adil Singh, I have 2 questions for you. I have 2 questions for you. Without commenting on either the Prime Minister or the former Prime Minister, I have 2 questions for you. Could the members of the Congress party within the Rajya Sabha today have stood in silent protest during Sachin's speech to voice their discontentment over what they wanted? My second question is, are you any closer today from having insulted a Bharat Ratna awardee who spent 4 decades of his life bringing glory to the country? Are you any closer to getting your answers today for having disrupted this one day? Could you have stood in silence and let him speak? Adil Singh.
Let me respond, Faye. Let me again say this at the cost of repetition, that the Congress has the highest of respect for Mr. Tendulkar. We moved a resolution on Friday. This issue could have been resolved on Friday itself had Mr. Modi come and responded to this. Now, coming to your second question, let me say this. Mr. Modi has insulted the former Prime Minister of this country. He has insulted the House. He's insulted the former Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Isn't it incumbent on the BJP and the owners on them to come and respond? Please come and answer this tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock and we can start with the proceedings. We can start with the business of the House. Why is the BJP running away
Amitabh
from
Sinha,
this?
please respond.
They
Amitabh
made an
Sinha, respond. I know Amitabh Sinha is dying to respond at this point. Mr. Sinha, my question is, could there have been a silent protest today?
2 or 3 points I would like to raise. Number one, my Congress friend, he is talking about the democracy. I don't know whether he understands the meaning of democracy. Democracy is for the people, but they are working for some one person, whoever he is, either ex-Prime Minister or the Prime Minister, number one. Number two, if you have a very, concern about what Prime Minister has said, Narendra Modi ji, then let us debate that whether his statement was right or not. Why he met just a minute, why he met the Pakistani, why he met along with the Pakistani, along with his team to Pakistani High Commissioner without informing the system, without informing the procedure. He didn't follow the procedure. Why he was so adamant and so eager? Number one. See, that is also a very pertinent question. But here it is not important that we should discuss about what Mr. Narendra Modi has said about Mr. Manmohan Singh. Important thing is whether the public interest is important for Congress or not. Whether Mr. Sachin Tendulkar was trying to raise some issues which was related to the sports condition of India, and in sports everybody knows that where India stands. So if he was trying to give a booster to Indian sports,
so I want to ask, I'm going to bring in Kishore Bhimani. Mr. Bhimani, it seems like we're not going to get too much work done in the winter session of Parliament, and I think that the unfortunate part about this is we're defeating the purpose of the honorary membership given to a sports person. Because the idea is if you have representatives of sports in Parliament, then you will get some pro-sports work done, Mr. Bhimani.
Faye, may I just put a couple of points in?
Please
Number
do.
one,
Yes.
we are here to discuss a very serious violation of Sachin Tendulkar's right to speak, of an individual who has given his life to a sport or to cinema, whatever it is. As you say, why don't you have a silent protest?
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with Mr.
Every time something serious happens, do people jump? Do you want people to jump out and jump up and down and say, now we won't let you speak? Today, a motor mouth like Mani Shankar Iyer asked for Pakistan's help to bring down Mr. Modi. Do the whole BJP go into for protest? The fact is, these political things happen. Yes, they may be wrong. Yes, people go out in the street and say, please protest. But don't come and stop somebody from speaking. Yes, Sachin, we were the biggest critics of Sachin when he wasn't coming to the Parliament and speaking. Now that he comes,
he needs to be...
Member of the House or not member of the House, I'm aware of everything. I'm a student of politics. I know that and you think Mr. Modi has got nothing going for him?
I'm glad
and
you know that, sir. Then if scandalous allegations have been levelled against him, then the country demands an answer.
So BJP didn't go out and protest against this, Mr. Singh.
Right.
There are ways of protesting, not by disrupting parliament, not by stopping people from doing constructive work.
And I think that's the most important question now. How do we get constructive work
let Mr.
done
Modi
at
come and
this
respond
rate?
tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock.
Mr. Pradeep Magazine, do you believe it's fair to keep all work pending, or do you think that, you know, it's fair to demand that the Prime Minister report to Parliament? Where do you stand here as a senior journalist, Mr. Magazine?
Look, from a political perspective, yes, I would like to know the allegations made against the Prime Minister, the Army Chief, and a lot of other high dignitaries of the state, not of a political party, and including a former Prime Minister. A Prime Minister accuses him of sedition, which is a fact that during Gujarat elections, this became an election issue. I, as a citizen of this country, am very keen to know, was it true or not? Because if it is true, then what is the government doing? What action is it taking? Because these are serious charges. And if it is not true, then a Prime Minister making these accusations is preposterous.
Just a minute,
this
just a
needs
minute.
to,
There is a process.
I have a right to know.
Let me explain
At the same time, I have a right also that when
let him finish, please.
May I
person
explain
is since I am a sport journalist,
May I explain
would lay extra weightage
Let him finish,
to it.
please.
And that too, if it happens to be a Sachin Tendulkar, that when he is speaking, I know that in Parliament, no one else is being allowed to speak, and we wanted this exception to be made for Sachin because of his stature and because of our love for sport, that we wanted to listen what policy matters he is suggesting to the state so that it helps our sports.
All right, Mr. Sinha, you can go ahead. Mr. Sinha, and then we'll go back to Sujay Jairaj. Mr. Sinha.
Well, yeah, very brief intervention. Number one, there are so many methods and procedures through which, if the member of parliament has any question in his mind or her mind, he can get the answer officially in writing. They can raise this issue in a start or unstart question also. But why this type of, just a minute, but why such type of, disruption politics? This actually is harming national interest. Number two, if they have guts to create, environment of protest, they should hit the streets. They should go to the people. They should not
From
waste
2010 to 2014.
See, this is basically disruptive mindset of Congress. They have nothing in their hand. They have bankruptcy of issues, and they have nothing in their schedule and in their curriculum, their program. That's why they are resorting to this type of activity. So let me advise Congress.
Hassan Rizvi is a political commentator.
Unsolicited advice, though, but I just want to give an advice that if such type of practice Congress will try to follow, they will completely, become extinct from Indian political scenario.
All right, Hassan Rizvi, respond to this. That get your answers. Amitabh Sinha puts forward.
There is a factual correction I would like to make.
Yes, Mr. Rizvi, please. Mr. Rizvi, please.
One, there is a factual correction. One is the factual correction I would like to make. That when the people met at the Manish Shankayer's residence, it was a part of the track 3 diplomacy. The people who are not aware about the track 1,
so we're not having that discussion right now. We're not having that discussion, and I'm not getting my debate derailed by politics. Hassan Rizvi, is it true
that discussion obviously is not the part? But my point is that, so factually, they should not boil it down at the level of Mr. Manmohan Singh and all.
See, that's not the point. And anyway, for what it's worth, Mr. Rizvi, the Congress will not accept the answer from you. They want the answer from the Prime Minister. But my question is this. Like Mr. Sinha has pointed out, that it's possible to get your answers in writing by submitting your questions in writing in Parliament. You don't have to create a ruckus. And this sort of ruckus creating will prevent or will harm our greater good of our people who need the work done. Your response on that?
Yeah. We all agree with that. We all agree with that the primary business of the legislature is to legislate. We all agree that primary business of the legislature is to legislate. But there is a very thin line of difference between right to dissent and a tendency to disrupt. We totally agree. So where to draw a line, it's very difficult because the party who are in the treasury, on the treasury benches, the party which was on the opposition once upon a time, they have been creating the same allegation. So we need to have a larger platform to deliberate upon that what are the ways out available to the either government or the opposition, so that the important legislation could have been passed. We are also concerned as a citizen of India, but not at the cost of the security concern.
All right, I have a couple of people on the phone line. Indra Iyer on the phone line from Thane. Indra Iyer, go ahead.
A 10-second intervention.
Hello?
Yes, Indra, go ahead.
My name is Indira Satyanarayan.
Yes? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Our children are becoming obese because they are spending more time in front of the TV rather than playing games. They need physical activity, they need sports. So Sachin Tendulkar is right in raising an important issue in the parliament. I have a question for Mr. Adil Singh. When MPs don't attend parliament, you say they don't attend parliament. And when they do attend parliament, you curtail their freedom of speech and you say, and you don't allow them to speak. What sort of political hypocrisy is this, Mr. Adil Singh?
Mr. Adil Singh Bobaria, do you want to respond to that, please?
Can I respond to this?
Please.
You know, Faye, you need to understand that the political executive in a democracy, the political executive in a parliamentary democracy is accountable to the parliament. If the Prime Minister makes a scandalous allegation against a member of the House, the country demands an answer. There was a simple solution to this. Mr. Modi could have come at 2 o'clock on Friday, last Friday, and responded to this. The House would have continued. Why is the BJP running away from it? Let them say that this was simply an electoral jumla and there's no truth to this.
Right.
We'll continue with the proceedings of the House, but you can't make such scandalous allegations. After all, with power comes responsibility.
I don't
Mr. Modi is responsible for his words.
Understand that
You
why
cannot make
Congress
such
is
to be fair, Amitabh Sinha, one last question to Amitabh Sinha. But isn't this true? Government after government, whether in government or in opposition, disrupting parliament has been a political tactic for governments over the years, including when the BJP was in the opposition. Now the Congress is in the opposition. Isn't that true, Amitabh Sinha?
Absolutely.
Can I get in here, please?
See, the very important point, but let me explain it very clearly, that some issues, few issues which are actually, related to corruption. When BJP used to, raise issues in the parliament and coming into the well, all you just, if you can do research,
look at the double
BJP's
standards.
issues were all related to corruption.
Yes.
All related to corruptions, and because UPI 1 and UPI 2,
we have a judgment today by a special CBI court acquitting all the accused in the 2G case.
Sujay Jairaj, I want to bring in Sujay Jairaj, and just one second.
That's why they didn't accept it.
Okay, so Amitabh Sinha says it depends on the merit of the protest.
Just to clarify that I don't understand high level of politics, nor have seen what has happened in the parliament today.
Yes, Sujay.
I personally feel that for subjects like, I think for subjects like education, healthcare and sports, we should keep politics out of it. The only agenda should be of the development of the country, and this is going to form the foundation of the country.
What about the national security?
Whichever party is in power, whoever is in power, when they are discussing these subjects, we should think about the future of our children, the future of our students, because they are the ones who will grow up to be superstars of our country. If we keep fighting like this on issues about politics and who said what, these students are going to get frustrated. They will leave the country and go perform somewhere else. Let us concentrate in providing the best infrastructure, top curriculum for the students, and have a positive and healthy environment rather than fighting for a party. I think once someone is elected, they are working for India and not for that particular party. So again and again the discussion is going towards this party said this, some party saying what. But we need to concentrate with one agenda, which is development of our country through our youth. And our youth is our strength.
That's very well said. I'm going to take the same question also to Reet, Abraham Reet. The lady on the phone said something very important. She said our children are becoming obese because there's no place for them to play. In all of our cities, we have parks where senior citizens go for walks and children are not allowed to kick a ball around those parks. At the end of the day, we've not even cut up space for our children to play in. And I agree with what Sujay is saying, that when it comes to matters like health and education and children's welfare, we should set aside our politics.
Yes, that it has to be done that way. Otherwise, we will see no improvement in sports, and our children will only get weaker and weaker. I mean, it's really important that they have strong genes if we have to see India winning more medals at the international levels. Any school which opens now, they don't give any importance to having a field at all. Most of the schools have, buildings one on top of the other, but no priority is given for any sports activities. Initially, when we were kids, we used to have at least 4-5 periods of PT classes. Now they have 1 period in a week for PT. What can you expect the children to do with 1 period of PT? It's really, really important that we concentrate on making sports as into our regular curriculum in schools.
That's really well said. In fact, I have to leave this discussion here because we've run out of time, but excellent points made by all of our panelists. And I want to remind our viewers of the fact that Reed talked about this insurance that Sachin Tendulkar today was going to place before Parliament would have ensured that international medal winners will actually have insurance that looks after them if they get injured. Reed was talking about how a sports person who gets injured normally loses their career because it's so expensive to get the right treatment. Sachin was going to talk about actually including sports in our curriculum, actually making sure that all children as a right get the right to play and they get the infrastructure, something so important. But Parliament was disrupted today and Sachin was not allowed to speak. He stood, he waited, and then he sat down. This was his maiden speech. And consider the fact that today we have big hospitals that have problems on how they actually function. We have schools currently that cannot assure security to children, and we have problems with sports and with health. Why can't we do this? Why can't we have special sessions where we only discuss education, health, and the rights of our children? And we don't disrupt those sessions. We let those sessions pass because these things are top priority. These things are investments we will make into our future, and our future are our children. Children are getting murdered in schools. Children are getting sexually exploited in schools. There are hospitals that are running riot and not following anybody's rules. We need to prioritize these things over everything else. By all means, storming the well of Parliament is your right. Do so. But let's prioritize our children and their rights over everything else. It's not about the fact that Sachin Tendulkar didn't get to speak. It's about the fact that he was going to put forward something that was so important, which is why he is in Parliament, and we didn't let him speak. Thanks for watching.